Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to Hot Program. I am your host with the most from the East Coast, and I am joined by a man who puts the menorah in Minority Report, a man who needs no introduction. He's not just your black friend. He's not just the atheist black friend. He's not just the theist black friend. He's not just the agnostic and indifference black friend. He is everybody's my one black friend. How are you doing today?
I'm exhausted, but let's have a great time today. Let's have a great broadcast. I've been doing some traveling while I'm traveling, so I guess that's sub-traveling, and got to visit family yesterday and stay at my aunt's giant big house in the suburbs and hang out with her. Hope she feels better. She was praying for her knee. I made no comment.
Oh, she's praying for the knee?
Yes, because I'm not a prayer hater. And
okay. Was there any other remedies involved, or was it exclusively a prayer? Was there any oils or ointments in the process?
I didn't even see ice.
Oh, there's just no attack. It's just the straight prayer.
It's the power of prayer.
The power of prayer alone, as they would say.
Yeah, just prayer. So, in time, prayer plus time.
Yes,
so
yes.
Get better.
You have to. Well, Joel Osteen talked about this. Your victory begins in the dark. So you have to first be trusting in Him, and believing that it's going to happen, and then that's your proving period, which the Lord then will dispense with the blessing after sufficient waiting period, I guess.
Just like not praying.
kind of the way it seems to go down for the rest of us.
We talked about that voice match thing to see how good my impressions could be. I'd like to throw Joe Osteen in the mix to see if I could do a pretty fair Joe Osteen impression. Now I know the sentiment. I've got that nailed. That's
Whoa.
Not a Christ reference. That's just a reference to having something done well. So,
you know what?
See how close I can voice match.
What is that? You just brought out there is something to the way he pronounces certain things, and where are they? Isn't he from Texas?
I don't know where he's from.
I know he's in Texas. I don't know where he's from though.
Yeah, he's got a very polite, open, welcoming demeanor. And I think if ministry hadn't worked out for him, he would have been excellent in customer service. Like you send your angriest customers to that guy, he's going to send them away happy somehow. So.
All right. Yeah, he was born in Houston, Texas. That's what I thought because he worked at that church, right? He was believe it or not, he was the one, as I understand his story, he was kind of like me. He was like the tech guy. Like he was behind the scenes in the family doing like the video, like doing the technical stuff. And so they didn't think he would be the one to ascend to the ministry and actually like take over things. And then I somehow he did. I don't know all that part of the story, but I always remember that
someone had to decrease so that he could increase.
Yeah. All right, so here's the thing I think is hard about doing the Joel Osteen bit. When I watch him, first off, he comes out, he's always got a very legit stand-up bit in the beginning.
Okay.
And it's hard to do Christian comedy.
No, but go on.
No, I think it's really hard to do Christian comedy because I don't think it's funny. Like mostly when you're conservative, to me, it doesn't strike my sense of humor because you have to play it safe, or you have to, the punchline is usually jabbing at something I don't think is worth making fun of. So like this one time I did a late night Counter-Apologetics against, I can't play it because he had the whole video blocked. Like they don't play around. I won't be playing any more Joel Osteen on the internet. Like they put the hook on that. But he basically said something to the effect of like God would, give him like when God was talking to Adam, he was basically telling him like he'd give him like the perfect woman and she would just listen to everything he said and be totally supportive and like never give him a hard time or anything. And then when Adam asked, okay, well, what's that going to cost me? God said, well, just, an arm. And so Adam said, well, what can I get for a rib? I don't have a delivery, but even somebody in my comments said, was he talking to an audience? Because that was funny. I was like, yo, it hit. It was good. And then the production value, like the stage presence and the timing. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not just the words and the whole thing. Like, he's really, like, his stage game is professional. You know what I'm saying?
Look, they're taught these things. They're taught how to do this. It's in a way, it's theater. In a way,
Yeah,
it is that.
It is.
And they know what things can reach that audience. All of these things have been scienced out. And when you go to ministerial school, you learn a little bit about it. Like, okay, get this. This is the church at work, at its finest. The minister's daughter was staying at my aunt's house to tend to my aunt. So whatever my aunt needed, I know I'm saying aunt and aunt. I was just
It's all good. It's all good.
So whatever my aunt needed, the minister's daughter would take care of. So she doesn't get paid for it. She's just there giving, sharing the abundance placed under the cross for her, helping my aunt out. And I was telling her about how there's that cadence that you'll hear from minister to minister. She wants to be a journalist. And I was explaining to her, you hear it in journalists too. The way that an on-camera journalist, like a live news reporter, is speaking, you'll notice that cadence is all over the United States whenever you hear them speak. And they're taught to talk like that. And you're chopping a sentence up into phrases, which are easier for people to digest.
Yes, I'll give you...
Osteen's probably pretty good at that.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple
to take a sentence, pause, and break it up, pause, for his audience, so that they can get engrossed into what he's saying. Do you know what I mean? Okay.
So this ties to a couple things. All right. So one is like, it's just as theater in, say, a Pentecostal church or a Catholic church, right? And I can't tell you how many Catholic masses I've been to. Now, see, like the director of religious formation at my high school, he was really good, right? Because he had to get his homily chops, if you will, honed in the era of like having to deal with kids and students all the time, right? So he couldn't bore us because you lose the student. So he had to get sharp. You see what I'm saying? Like my grandfather, though, he doesn't have that Osteen way. He went to Bible college too. He's got his doctorate in theology or divinity, whatever it is. But it's like it was like a Pentecostal school, so they don't have the same high level production value. They got trained more in the fire and the brimstone and how to, whatever their stuff was. So I'm just saying there's different flavors of it, and there's good. But you brought up some of the stuff that's really great, like the showmanship. So I've been noticing this. So like, even with like say late night counter-apologetics, yesterday I did like a intro that I recorded. And one of the things I did when I recorded it to make it build, it's supposed to be dramatically like too long and hyperbolically like overdone. But you're right, a lot of it was pausing to let certain things build. You don't just keep rolling through all the phrases. You have something like I would introduce the show, welcome to Late Night Counter-Apologetics. And now, please help me welcome your host. You know what I mean? Like just those to try to, you're building that's time. Like you're putting on a show. You've got to let the people anticipate and build. Okay, let's get, of course you're thinking, let's just get to them. You gotta build it up. And then I think I thought about this when I play drums a lot. A lot of the things I don't like when I see less experienced musicians do, you're doing too many notes. You gotta bum 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 boom. Bang, you got to put them little, let it breathe, we used to say. Just let it breathe for a second. That's the difference between an amateur and a pro. The pro knows when to let it breathe. And then even in wrestling, there's a guy named Scott Hall, Razor Ramon.
That is not wrestling.
No, check this out. Razor Ramon, right?
Wrestling.
wrestling. I don't know if you ever heard, if you remember Razor Ramon, right? But he was a big star back in the '90s, and he passed recently, unfortunately. And they were talking about, what made him so great, like what were the little things he would do, right? And so here's a couple. I'll tell you. Maybe we'll bring in our guest. So one was somebody had said he would tell wrestlers to slow down and stop going from move to move to move to move to move. Mm-hmm. And the reason was because if you just hit somebody and then you hit the ropes and then you toss them and then you're down and you're up and you just keep going, the commentators just have to keep calling move after move after move. But what the commentators want to do is put you over, right? Or tell the story of the match or the feud. And they can't do that if you're going from move to move to move. So you got to grab a headlock. The headlock slows down, or put somebody in a bear hug, right? And now I can go, when my one black friend gets you in that bear hug with his incredible strength, there's nowhere to go.
That's right.
And if he gets this bear hug and starts to squeeze and wear down his opponent this Sunday on the pay-per-view, I don't see any way he can't win the championship as he's the challenger this Sunday. Don't forget to tune in this Sunday. You're going to have to see this, but I don't know. The champion, it's going to be a little bit hard for him to dominate. You see what I'm saying? And I can do that. I can't do that if you keep hitting from move to move to move. Like you got to slow down. You got to get the rest spots in there. And then another thing he would do is he would say, there's this thing where, like, let's say we both hit each other. We both close on each other at the same time. So then we're both laying on the mat. Well, now the thing is, the ref is going to start to count slowly up to 10. And somebody's got to get back to their feet before the 10 count, right? And every wrestling fan knows how this goes. The match is never going to end this way. No. They're always going to get to their feet right around, 7 to 9 seconds and move the match. But what they would do is they'd go down and then they kind of start rolling around, or they start moving, or they start to kind of struggle. And he would say, don't do that. You're ruining the moment. When it happens, he would say, lay there absolutely still. And let the audience anticipate not knowing what's going to happen next. Taking a moment to just take in what's happening. Let it come all the way down, right? And then work back up from nothing again. And so it's just those, like you said, those little extra things of the professionalism of the we're working on that here, but this is like show business.
It's going to get there. As I say, it's a bit like church. Sometimes it's like church.
So
this broadcast.
So speaking of that, we are taking it to the next level. We told you folks, we know you love to hear what we have to say, but this show is really all about the community. It's all about bringing people onto the program, hearing what they have to say, engaging them in discussion, okay? And if you want to do that, folks, it's quite simple. All you do is you follow the link. You follow the link. You jump into the StreamYard, you chill backstage in the waiting area, the green room, if you will, in show business speak. Okay? You enjoy the private chat, you enjoy the backstage view, you enjoy being part of the big boys, and then Myron Jr., our assistant, he hits me in my ear. He says, Jay, you our guest is backstage. Our guest is backstage. Please wrap this up and bring our guest on. He tells me in my ear, But Myron, this is our show, Myron. The host control this show, Myron Jr. Okay. But anyway, we are gonna bring on our first, I think, scheduled guest on this show. Maybe. Did we have a scheduled guest before?
Yeah, but you didn't interview her because I was.
Oh yeah, right. So this is our first completely scheduled guest that's here, and it's a great because today we're going to be talking about building community as a non-believer, finding community, and our guest is certainly somebody who has done that, and we're going to have a great conversation about that. So please welcome to the program. We like to call him Deacon No Name around here. Let's solo him up. Just give it up for Deacon No Name coming through the program.
Wait,
Round
you're
Just-
of
making me
applause.
blush.
Just a round of applause.
If I wasn't dead inside right now, I'd be grinning from ear to ear. But luckily, Myron has freed me from such, base emotions.
Yes. Yes.
The
No Name is
pleasure.
also a true Pine Creekster, a true devotee of the Flying Man. So No Name, tell the people a little bit about yourself and however you'd like to introduce yourself to folks.
Sure. I'm a reformed Myronist. I grew up Christian, but I found the right way. The Flying Man. He flied for us, and so I'm here to spread the good news.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Build the
So
community, sow doubt.
So I don't know that the hot program audience. A lot of us are Creeksters, but I think this program, trying to definitely keep it open to the uninitiated.
Yeah.
They probably don't really know a lot about the Flying Man. But just for those that don't know, we're referencing if you head over to Pine Creek's channel. Doug, someone we're a big fan of, who is himself a former believer. And, in this community, we get into a lot of conversations across the sort of belief divide, if you will. And, you hear a lot of different what we call techniques for counter-apologizing. Everybody's got their favorite go-to thing. If you're talking to a theist or a believer, they have their favorite argument or piece of evidence that they think supports their faith. And on the other side, people tend to have their biggest defeater, like their go-to, thing of why they don't believe or whatever. And, it's a bit more dynamic than that. It's just like most people, we all have those kind of points we like more than others. And Doug's thing is the Flying Man, where what the goal there is to lay out essentially the same case for Christianity with similar evidence, and to see when a person goes from believing in the Flying Man to not believing in the Flying Man. And fortunately, just because we're so prepared around here, because the tech team is just on top of the game, because
You got to give it up to your assistant, Myron Jr.
Yes.
Because of the stacks and stacks of cash that we have been just investing in especially into the audio department. We actually have some of the testimony here.
My great-great-great-great-great-grandfather could fly, literally, unaided. He ran off the cliff at the Grand Canyon here in Arizona, and he started flying.
And so then the question is like, well, do you now believe that? Do you believe that Doug's ancestor flew? Because you've heard the story now, right? There's a story now that he flew over the Grand Canyon, and a lot of people go, well, no, I don't believe that. And so then we'll start to build like the evidence, like one piece at a time.
Diaries written about him by 4 of his friends.
Right. Okay. So now we've got diaries written about him by 4 of his friends. Do you believe it now?
Myron flew in front of 512 friends and to the author of this book.
And it's like, okay,
can't make that up.
No, definitely can't make that up. It's like, well, do you believe it now? And they're still like, no. And then we go, all right, well, what about this?
People who were antagonistic to the man flying, they never liked the guy. They came to believe.
Right. So, all right. So now we've got antagonistic converts, right? Because that was always a big thing with Christians, right? Because Paul persecuted the Christians, right? And then he had the Damascus Road experience, the vision that nobody else that was with him saw, but he had a vision nevertheless, right? And then people are like, well, of course, that proves it right there, because Paul persecuted the Christians and he wouldn't have converted unless it was true.
Or there was money in it.
you talking about money in it?
He does go on a bit about money.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
You know, we don't even have a counter-apologetic for that. But what do y'all? Let's take a little detour.
Nuh-uh.
The power of nuh-uh compels you.
That's
Power
right.
of nuh-uh
Rock solid. Nuh-uh.
Yeah, nuh-uh is strong. That is a rock solid defense. I like.
But wait, what do y'all? Real quick, what do y'all think of Paul? Because I'm kind of in the Paul was a swindler camp. To me, I'm like Paul was the initial. Nathan is doing Digital Gnosis. Y'all follow Digital Gnosis. This is a community supporting channel here. Support Digital Gnosis. He is he's doing Counter-Apologetics industrial complex video at like 1 a.m. because he's on like a crazy different time zone.
Yeah, I think he's in the UK. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I think tonight I'll probably do the chapter 2 of Christopher Hitchens that we started last week. I'll probably do that at like 10, and then maybe I'll switch over to Twitch and do like a watch party for Nathan's thing.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
I try to have a more charitable spin on Paul.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm not a Paul apologist. Like, I don't think Paul is necessarily a nice person or anything. But I think it would be just human nature, right? In my opinion, I think it's just human nature that someone who has been a tax collector, who's been, quote unquote, oppressing a group of his own people, right? It's not like Christians were Gentiles at this point. They were all Jews. So he's going after his own people. Mm-hmm. And he has like a stroke, right? Some kind of stroke on the road to Damascus.
Oh, yeah, this is your actual. So this is on the Damascus road. So that's historical. Yeah. He's there, and then wait. You think he had
assuming this actually happened?
Okay.
I take a more naturalistic viewpoint about it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's very likely that if you associate, like if you have a guilt complex about something, like something you feel bad about, and then you have some kind of religious experience that you can't explain. And remember, we're talking about a time period in which they thought epilepsy was caused by demons and stuff, right? So ain't nobody knowing what a fucking, cerebral hemorrhage is or nothing, right?
Right.
So dude has a stroke and he sees, flashes of light. Maybe he sees one of the last images he remembers, some Christian iconography where at the last house he was at. And he feels bad about it, right? And so I think it's human nature that you would make that flip, right? People make these weird flips all the time. And Hitchens is what made me think of it. He switched from being, kind of a liberal to a conservative.
Sure.
At some point in his life.
Yep.
And I don't think that required a stroke or anything like that. So I think it's very likely that, he experienced something. But the way it's described is that the people with him don't experience it at all. Well, it varies. One guy says he heard something, but
it depends on which account. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Paul could have just been muttering, while he was having his seizure or whatever. Or, you know how people are. They want to make their boss look good. They're like, oh, yeah, I totally heard it too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
They don't want the boss to look crazy or anything.
Right.
I don't know. People were more superstitious back then.
Yes.
People are good at convincing themselves of certain things, right, when they're ignorant and superstitious. And so they attribute supernatural causation to it. It doesn't make it true, right? It doesn't, like, say Paul had been literally struck by lightning. Let's just change the story a little bit. In the story, Paul and his buddies are going to Damascus. He gets struck by lightning. The other two even report seeing it. They're like, yep, we saw it. He got struck by lightning. Now, Paul, he says, I got struck by lightning, and then I saw Jesus. Right? I saw Jesus. He spoke to me. He told me all this shit. Would that make it any more true or likely? that he had seen Jesus and spoken to Jesus, that by virtue of the fact that two other people witnessed him being struck by lightning.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. Like, no, it wouldn't really change anything.
Yeah, it wouldn't change a thing, right? And so I think this was just an internal vision that he had while having some kind of stroke or seizure. And, you know, back in the day, people idolized folks like that, right? I mean, they thought they were getting divine revelation when they're lying in the dirt, foaming at the mouth, babbling incoherently. They're like, oh, they've been touched by the gods. And so I don't think it far-fetched that somebody like that could easily build a reputation quickly as a holy man. And from there, you can just make moral pronouncements and shit. Right. Because people take you seriously. They see you as an authority figure. And from there, you can see how it would naturally accrete layers of kind of bureaucracy that become self-sustaining.
So a couple things struck me when we were talking. So one is that you're right. There was a whole different cultural milieu or whatever we say, right? Such that we say that they're
yeah, you can just say cultural context. I guess,
cultural
right?
context. They like they interpreted things that we always use. Pine Creek actually uses the example of a seizure, right? He's like, if somebody falls on the ground, they start doing the whole thing. You and I would say they have a seizure, but back then they may have said they were touched or possessed or there's some super. So Paul could very easily have had something actually happen on the road to Damascus,
right?
And then he's genuinely interpreting that as a supernatural occurrence.
Yes, and I don't see how that would necessarily indicate that he is intentionally deceiving, right? Like, he could have just as been equally convinced of the validity of what he saw.
Sure,
right. That doesn't make him a con man or a swindler necessarily.
Yeah. I guess for me,
I mean, he had a cushy job before, right? Like, he's actually, I think it's a worse theorem or hypothesis to say that he was in it for the money. Personally, like, I object to that.
Oh yeah, you know what? You're making a good point.
He had a good job before, right? Like,
he's from a family that you could deduce he's from a family that was quite well off financially.
Right.
And then instead,
he was a tax collector, which is not. It's not like being an IRS agent nowadays, right? Like, a tax collector was basically a mafioso sub boss, right? Like the guy that they send to the neighborhood to shake down all the local grocery stores and shit for protection.
They gotta make sure you get the money.
Right. I mean, yeah, a tax collector back in those days was basically a member of the ruling class. It wasn't. They didn't subcontract it out to civilians, right? Like, you were a tax collector. You were like some nephew of.
You do at least get that impression from the way they seem to have been talked about, right? There's always like a certain aura when the word tax collector is mentioned in that context, right? Like, that's always a big deal, like Jesus with the tax collector.
Well, I mean, if you know the history of the area, then like and the like the geopolitical setup of the time, it wasn't like we take certain governmental efficiencies for granted nowadays, right? Like, you have this giant civilian bureaucracy kind of in between the ruled and the rulers. But back in the day, there were areas that had very long-lasting multi-layered bureaucracies, but that wasn't Judea at that time. It wasn't Rome at that time. And so government was very hands-on, right? Like, you sent your nephew to do something, and then he had his direct family and his best friends. A lot of adoption, but basically you had like your core family unit that you trusted to get the job done. And that cultural trait was true of most ruling elites at that time. So by virtue of Paul being a tax collector, he was like a minor member. You know, what you wouldn't necessarily be in danger of inheriting leadership necessarily, but you were in the family.
Yeah,
So
it's actually a really good point because it's almost like Hitchens sometimes himself falls down on the historicity thing. And one of the most convincing things to him is, and I'm not saying that I think he's right, but he just says the fact that they have to work so hard to move his place of birth seems to be like there was somebody, or else why go through this whole effort to correct the birthplace.
Right.
And
He
almost
says the fakery of the story. His exact words, the fakery of the story.
right, yeah, the fakery makes it like, well, then there was more likely something, or else why not just go all the way with it. And I think No Name, that's what you're kind of saying, is that, and when I say swindler, I guess I meant there's a range, right? There was a range all the way from Paul concocts this to be the original Joel Osteen, if you will. But I was thinking it more along the lines of, he does become genuinely convinced, right? But then he writes a lot about money, right? Like, why shouldn't I be able to?
Because in Roman society, that was everything, right? Like, you literally had to buy your way into the upper class. You had to have like so many millions of sesterci or denarii, whichever, whatever. No, literally,
Whatever
like
the currency was.
you had to show evidence of your wealth. It wasn't. Again, I think in modern culture we don't tend to brag about how much money we make, right? That's considered kind of tactless or tasteless,
Right.
I mean, in just polite society, you don't sit around talking about how much you make or things like that. At least that's how I was raised.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Right. But in Roman society, it was like flaunted, right? Like it was very like Trump, right? It's very much like, like I got to put gold on everything and I got to show how badass I am, because that was their culture. And so to get into the elite, patrician class in Roman society, you needed a lot of money, and that was like literally the only way for them to take you seriously. You couldn't speak in front of the Senate. You couldn't get a job as a tribune or one of the legislators or anything like that. So if you wanted to influence Roman society, you needed money, right? And so that wasn't considered.
My one black friend has something for you. Go ahead, my one.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
First of all, Paul wasn't Jewish. He wasn't from Judah. He was from Benjamin. He was a Hebrew of Hebrews. So I think a lot of times.
Right. That's
by the way, Pocketlocker, can you go to Acts 22? Pull up Acts 22. This is backing up what No Name is saying. We make the mistake that there weren't all these tribes.
I know. I do that too. I kind of lump everybody in together.
I think it's very important to remember that there were all those different tribes. For instance, when people say like, oh, the Gospel of John is so racist, they say the Jews did this, the Jews did that. Well, allow me to take my eraser and erase whatever's covering up the fact that they had these different tribes of Hebrews. So all you needed was for that perspective that the Jews, was for the writer to simply be from a different tribe of the Hebrews. And he's pointing the finger at the Judeans, like they did this.
Yeah, because nobody can hate somebody racist. like somebody who resembles them.
What was what verse are we reading here?
Sure, we're going down to go to 22 to let's say 22 to 29. That gives us pretty good context. So here, the Apostle Paul's about to be carted off. He tells a centurion that he's a Roman citizen.
All right, so
the centurion has an interesting reply that backs up what No Name is saying.
All right, so Paul, the Roman citizen. The crowd listened to Paul until he said this. Then they raised their voices and shouted, "Rid the earth of him. He's not fit to live." As they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, the commander ordered that Paul be taken into the barracks. He directed that he be flogged and interrogated in order to find out why the people were shouting at him like this. As they stretched him out and flog him, Paul said to the centurion standing there, "Is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty?" When the centurion heard this, he went to the commander and reported it. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "This man is a Roman citizen." The commander went to Paul and asked, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" "Yes, I am," he answered. Then the commander said, "I had to pay a lot of money for my citizenship, but I was born a citizen," Paul replied. Those who were about to interrogate him withdrew immediately. The commander himself was alarmed, and then he realized that he had put Paul, a Roman citizen, in chains. Oh, wow.
I'm telling you, that was a big deal, right? Like later on, under the Pax Romana, which is 200 years after this period,
That means
Roman
peace,
citizenship got
Yes.
extended. Got extended to literally like everyone within the territorial empire, right? But that was much later. So at this point, to be a Roman citizen was a big, hairy, stinking deal, right? And Romans had very different rules about how they treated citizens versus non-citizens. And so what Paul is saying basically there is that you got to treat me under the law like a Roman citizen. So I get a trial, you gotta follow the law with me. And if I was just some, random dude you dragged in off the street that was a Judean, well, yeah, you could have your way with him because that's how Roman law worked. It very much was like us and everybody else is how they
Very interesting. All right, so my one black friend, do you have a similar take on Paul?
I had a crazy idea once, and I thought I called it the weaker case. There's a series of ideas that were the weaker cases. And so I dismissed these ideas. The ideas were based on, when I read the Gospels and some of the letters of Paul, they sure seem to me like a high school kid's project that they had to do. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying the fact that they're doing all this borrowing from other works, and I think it was mandatory. I don't think it was I don't think they were told not to do that. I think they were told you must do that because they're learning to write. So you have to use some of the things that people have written that were really great and integrate those into your project. And I think that the Jesus project just became one that they all glommed onto. When the Bible says Jesus was seen by above 500, I asked the question, where do you get 500 people gathered together? Some sort of academy. It could be a congregation. It could be church or synagogue for them. Could be synagogue. It could be some early church gathering, sure, or it could be a school. And when you're writing these things, you plant all these inside jokes in it that you're laughing. Because I was in creative writing club. We would literally put each other in our stories.
Yeah,
I
remember we had a story in our student publication, and it was literally called The Inside Joke, and you had to be in my senior class to understand anything.
Well, I think there's great power in that. I did share, I think I shared this with you, Pocketlocker, how in Diodorus Siculus's book, he's telling about how there was an epiphany of, I believe it was Osiris. And so this child was born, and people thought it was Osiris, come to life. And how this cultural story was repeatedly changed. And then somebody made it into a play. He comments, like, once the writers got a hold of it, but it became a play. And the audience was convinced that this really happened. Now, this is at a time where people believed that the sun was being pulled across the sky by horses, right?
Right.
In his chariot. going across the sky. You know, it was that simple. People believed all sorts of things that we just don't believe in large numbers now. How hard is it to believe a guy came back from the dead? How hard is it that a guy is a miracle worker and took food and took a small bit of food and fed all these people, as opposed to those people actually brought food and shared it?
Do you think that there's a link between the feeding of the 500 and the appearing to the? Do you think there's a link there, or do you think that's just a
I think it's
popular
5,000
number?
and 4,000, the two different
Oh,
feedings.
okay. Am I getting the numbers wrong?
So no,
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't think there's a link at all. I actually think that's borrowing from either First or Second Samuel. I'm not sure which one.
Okay.
Just like if I were to tell you, a lot of these scholars are looking for Q, like the gospel, like where do we find Q? Where do we find Q? I think a lot of times Q is just borrowing from the Old Testament, like First and Second Samuel.
Do you think Q's a real thing? I don't think it exists.
Again, based on what I just said, I think that's what Q is. They're borrowing. So
there is no actual text that would be Q.
No,
right?
It's several. They're just picking and choosing. For instance, there's Jesus is not an official king, but he becomes one, right? You see in the stories about him, how he sort of gets a coronation. Remember, Pilate's asking him, "Are you the king? You have said so." That sort of thing, where there's this coronation process where I'll write all this out so we can go through it on a future episode, so you can see, not all of it, but a lot of it you can see. I'll show you how it's broken down. I'll show you where they pulled this from. I'll show you why they wrote, well, not why. I'll show you what they wrote, what they pulled from the prophets, what they pulled from the Old Testament, even down to the woman who puts her 2 mites in the fund at the temple. Even her, she's in the Old Testament. Well, she's in the prophets. Even her. So there's so many details, and I almost would wager, I don't have time to do this project, but I said to myself, I bet you I could pull almost anything out of the stories about Jesus in the Gospels and find it in the Old Testament, like literally almost none of it.
All right, so this brings up another. We'll try to get back on course, but this brings up another really good. This brings up another good quick tangent. What do you guys think about the idea? Because you just said if I take everything in the New Testament or the Gospel, I can go and find where they're pulling something from the Old Testament. So, where do you guys think? There's this idea that a lot of, right? So we know all the Gospels are copying Mark, right?
Right.
But some people think, I guess, and it could be both, but some people think that Mark is, doing what my one black friend just said, like there's all the Old Testament stuff. But other people think Mark is making Jesus out of Paul's letters, right? Where are you guys at on that question?
Yeah, I've run into this before, and kind of like what my one black friend was saying earlier, where you can see how someone learned to write using the classics, right? Like in scribe school, you were given, Homer, and then later on, I guess, Ovid, right? And it wasn't considered plagiarism. You wrote in that style. Right. And you borrowed themes from it because it was popular fiction and people would recognize that imagery. Right. And so it was just part of the writing style. It was just, call it a genre, I guess. And I could easily see someone taking Paul's letters and then a sayings gospel, like the Gospel of Thomas.
Yes.
Where it's just a bunch of like wisdom sayings and parables and stuff. And then taking the framework of Paul along with those sayings to create a narrative out of them, a place to put them, a place to make it fit.
So let's take that. Okay. I used to write screenplays. I never made it in when I would take notes for the biggest, fattest screenplay I ever wrote, I had a voice recorder in my car, not a phone, folks, a voice recorder. And I would be driving and I'd think of some scene or dialogue between characters and I would record it. But in doing that, I had a list of sayings and a list of happenings to stick to when I wrote the final story. Typically, I didn't do that. I had a sheet of 8.5 by 11. I'd write 1 to 33 on it. And those 33 things were my 33 story points. Sometimes I'd go a little more, as high as 38. But typically, I can get you about 3 pages on average per story point. And boom, I could turn out a script that was 90 plus pages. No problem.
No.
If I am the teacher, let's go back to my weaker cases. If I am the teacher and I have a class and I'm teaching them to do this, having a sayings document saying, all right, kids, here's what is required to go in your story. Here's what you have to put in there. And if you take Mark, and Mark is my 7th grade, 8th grade English teacher, if he saw this, would be smiling right now. If a teacher has a permanent file of student works and even their own that they've kept over the years that they thought were fairly remarkable, might they use that as a basis of teaching their students? All right, I wrote this. You all have a copy. Now build on this. You have to use these things.
Look,
and
Paul,
you come up with your very own version.
My black friend, listen, in Paul's letters, he tells his churches to create the theology.
Sorry, No Name, you just got muted. Do you know why you got muted? Did you come through our channel and call him my black friend? Do you have other black friends? You are not permitted to have other black friends.
I thought I was friends with you, Jay. I mean, I don't know.
I don't count. I don't count.
I'm sorry, my one black friend. I apologize. It's a mouthful to say. So I'm, is there something else I can call you that's shorter?
You could say MOBF. MOBFF. My one MOBF. A second F is forever. I might do shirts one day. Hashtag MOBF.
Right. Okay. So I'm saying, like, I think what you're describing, like say the book of Mark that we have, was from what I've researched, a joint community effort, right? It wasn't written by one person necessarily. From my research, it was a kind of a community. It looks like a community project, right? And in Paul's letters, he expounds on the fact that he can't answer all these questions, right? Because in these back and forths, he's obviously answering questions that these nascent churches have, right? He's just set them up, and he's given the barest bones of theology to them. And now they're asking him questions like, what should we do about this? What should we do about that? And he says, your job as Christians is to hammer this shit out. Like, your job is to write the theology. And so I think that's what they did. I think they took that to heart. And they said, we've got to fill in these blanks and create a narrative using these sayings, using these teachings, and make them make sense, right? And I think that was what we got. And the ending of Mark is intentionally left as a cliffhanger to encourage more filling in of the blanks, right? Like it's like if you did a community fan fiction project where somebody starts a story and the next person carries it on. That was the tradition. I think that's what they were doing.
Yeah. So a couple of things struck me. So one, can you distinguish for us, if I pull it, where I guess we're done with this, Paul. So let's go to Mark. Where is the original ending at?
Oh gosh,
it's I don't know. I think 16 is where it finally ends.
Oh wait, yeah, 16. Yeah, that's the ending of it. But it's what is it? 7 or 9 verses. It's usually in red text.
Yeah, right. I don't know if they put it in. I don't think. I doubt if they put it in red on here. Oh, let's see. Let's do original ending to Mark, right?
Yeah, original ending of Mark. I'm sorry, that is true. I may be talking about a lot of inside jargon here.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's all right. We'll just pull it.
I think we three know what I'm talking about, and I assume that our audience are the smartest.
I don't remember, and it's not that it's not there. I don't remember Paul saying write the theology. That would be interesting. I went to an atheist convention when I still believed in God, and I had a list of questions for Dr. Robert Price, who was kind enough to answer my question. I even got.
Here it says it does say it. It separated it. So the cliffhanger ending is trembling and bewildered. The women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. So you're saying that's the cliffhanger.
That's the cliffhanger.
The fact that they said
right?
nothing to no one because they were afraid. And then now we have these other things. And then another thing to touch on real quickly is we've started to do some scribal work on these additional manuscripts that we found of the Flying Man documentation. And No Name's been helping me with that. And to speak to all of this, like, No Name, didn't it immediately hit you, the fun of it? Like the doing the whole scribal thing and checking for the consistencies and and doing all that. Like the fact that you guys said, like, the community fan fiction project of it, like, it's immediate. Like, it's not
Mo, when if you ever get around to reading this as a writer, I think it'll stand out immediately to you that this was a joint project, right?
Okay.
Even though Jay did all the editing or typing or whatever, we were going back and forth on this. And so I think when you view Mark or any of the Gospels through that lens, maybe not Luke, but most of the Gospels through that lens of it being like community fan fiction, in my opinion, it starts to make a whole lot more sense. Well, and that may be what you were breaking down for your case too.
Yeah. I mean, I can't swear to it being the work of students or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, no, it's speculation.
I would happily swear to it being the work of at least a handful of writers using the Old Testament to create Jesus and what Jesus will do. There are things that Jesus did that Paul did. And when I had questions for Dr. Price, I asked him, like, I think I said, could Jesus be Paul? Somebody's probably got video of that.
Okay.
It was in Orange County.
Okay.
Could Jesus be Paul? And, I don't think that was the first time he got that question. And I frankly don't remember his answer, but it might have been no.
Right.
But
he thinks Paul is Simon Magus.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And he also links Paul. I think he's thrown it around that Paul was like a pseudonym for like Josephus. I think
that's Hegesippus. People had asked him, was Hegesippus Josephus? There seems to be within the early Christian framework that people could go through it, could get a new name, right?
Yeah.
So
almost like
Paul
when
became Paul, and Simon became Peter. And I think this is merely part of when you
being born again.
Let me spell it out for you. Here's
right. It's like when people would join like Farrakhan's or Malcolm X's communities.
Yeah, in the Nation of Islam, you get a new name.
Yeah, they would adopt Muslim names.
Yeah, you get a new name. So what I think was happening, if all this is based on real people, it would seem that Jesus was an understudy for a time of John the Baptist, or John saw Jesus do something.
This has
to be the Messiah, and Jesus studied under John the Baptist, And maybe Jesus's name was something else. I know we hear, oh, they shall call his name Emmanuel, which means God with us. Well, it doesn't have to be a proper name. If people think that Jesus is God among men, they can say God is with us.
Mm-hmm.
And Emmanuel becomes a nickname from the common people. And I think if you did a search in the Bible and typed God with us, you're going to see that in the New Testament. I'm pretty sure you would see it in the New Testament. So it's sort of like how you would look for that. To me, this is go fish. The Bible is go fish for this, what I'm explaining. If you don't find it here, go fish, because it's still in the deck. It's still face down somewhere in the Old Testament.
The Pesher, right?
You find it.
The Pesher, the Bible code.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems like you'd have to know.
No,
you'd have to
just
know what
the
you're
Pesher
mining
tradition,
for.
like where you're going through the scripture trying to piece it together, right? That's what Carrier calls the Pesher tradition.
And there are those that would say, well, my one black friend, your way is proof texting. I'm like, well, the key word is proof.
Right.
The key word is proof. If I'm telling you, even the woman at the well, think of what a minor detail of that is. Even the woman at the well is there. And on your late night apologetics with No Name the other night, I mentioned, that the Sermon on the Mount, what the Sermon on the Mount is. The Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5-7, it's an outline for the book of Matthew. It's an outline for it. When Jesus tells that woman, tells his disciples, do not cast your pearls before swine, or else they will turn and rend you. Do not give what is holy unto dogs. He says that first. Do not cast your pearls before swine. Later, he calls this old lady a dog. Even dog eats what
off the crumbs.
The master's table. Okay. Later on, he heals the demoniac, casting out the demons into the pigs. When he says they will turn and rend you, this is when Jesus is rejected and Barabbas is chosen. Okay. The they isn't the pigs that he cast the demons into. The they isn't even the demons. The they is the people. Because what? The people threw Jesus and his disciples out. Like, you guys have to go. You can't stay here. You're destructive, Jesus.
Yeah.
Stop ruining people's personal property.
Just a quick link I'll put there in the chat for people. We were actually on my Twitch the other night. So I do late night Counter-Apologetics 1 a.m. on my personal YouTube on 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. And then throughout the week and just to kind of do behind the scenes stuff, I stream over on my Twitch. So go ahead and give that channel a follow. This is actually a good segue though. So talking about sort of the creation of sacred text as like a community project, I think, because our topic today is supposed to be finding community as a non-believer, right? And this is sort of interesting. Like we've sort of jumped to one extreme, right? Because I think part of why I think this topic is interesting is because community is, let's just say, different, at least for a long time, if you transition from being a believer to a non-believer, right? And I think that that's one of the things that gets at a heart of, I think, why it's so hard to leave faith for a lot of people. It's really about their life. And, if we were saying that, well, part of the religious experience is you might engage in some community fan fiction, sacred text creation, that might be at the far extreme of the engagement. But nevertheless, it does get at, like, that is a really fun thing to do with people, right? I was always part of a lot of what you even see on late night Counter-Apologetics is really, an expression of things that have been important to me my whole life. Because when I was a kid, finding like fantasy wrestling role-playing communities were really important to me, because I was a wrestling fan, and you go through.
Oh my God, you did that too?
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, like the online.
I need to hook you up with my buddy Roger. He used to run a wrestling like role-playing website.
Yeah, it's like D&D for wrestling fans.
Yeah. He conned me into doing color commentary at this semi-pro wrestling event one time in Chattanooga.
Oh, that's perfect.
Oh my God!
So wait,
It
you
was,
did commentary at a live event?
yeah, it was this.
Oh, that's
It was
crazy.
the headliner of the event was a very highly coked out Jake the Snake Roberts.
Oh my
Um,
goodness. Oh my, it's
I'm
epic.
trying to remember the time frame.
I've
This
always
had
wanted
to
to do
be
that.
early
That's so cool.
2000s. Like, trying to remember because my daughter, I took my kid to that show, and we got to meet this guy named. He was up and coming. He hadn't really hit the big time yet, but his name was Lance Hoyt. I remember he was ginormous,
Right,
really
right.
tall, and he was like a god among men in that event, y'all. I'm not kidding. Like every guy there was a big dude, right? I mean, we're talking like 6-footers for the most part.
Yeah, he's super famous. That they call him
Oh,
Lance
is he super
Archer.
famous?
Yeah, they call him Lance Archer now. But yeah, he's in All Elite Wrestling. He's a
Oh,
big
okay.
deal. He's a big deal.
Okay.
Wrestler, ladies
Well, he
and
was
gentlemen, wrestler.
he was a nobody at that point,
Wrestler.
and he was going by Lance Hoyt I
Yep,
remember
yep.
that.
No, yep, that's his real name, I think.
But all these other guys, you meet some dude, he's like 6'3", 6'4", 260. You're like, that's a big dude, and then you run into Lance, and you're like, God, that is
Right. He's
that is
just,
like,
yeah.
that is just ginormous. So it was a lot of fun. I don't know jack shit about wrestling except what I remember from my
TV.
childhood. Yeah, like Rowdy Piper time period, Hulk Hogan, that time, 80s mostly.
Right.
And so my buddy, he is just this huge wrestling fan, knows everything about it. And he is just off in the zone because he is so engrossed in what's going on. He just completely forgets to do his job, which he's supposed to be the straight guy,
Right,
the
not
analyst.
yeah.
And I was told I was supposed to be the color guy.
Right.
So I'm literally having to just make up wrestling moves at this point, right? Like I'm
you don't know
yelling.
the actual moves, yeah.
I don't know the names of any of these moves.
Right.
And so at one point I make up a name for a move, and I don't even remember what I called it. And later on in the locker room, one of the wrestlers comes up to me and goes, "Hey, I really like the name of that move you did for me." And I was like,
yeah, you put him over.
What name was that? And he told me, and he was like, "Yeah, that's what I'm going to start calling it from now on."
Oh, that's amazing.
His move.
Was it?
Huh?
No, he's gonna name some moves. So
Yeah, I don't know,
so,
dude.
so
I'm
what's-
telling you, I don't remember any of the wrestling moves. But in the moment, I was just like, "Oh, and it's a over the shoulder boulder holder or whatever." I don't remember what I called.
Right. And yeah, but my point was like that was it was important then, right? Because it was something that I was passionate about, and then you get to that point where a lot of your maybe your local friend group kind of grows out of that. Right, so that your friends aren't as into it anymore, and then fortunately the kind of internet thing hit, and now 20 years later we still do that type of thing, but now we do it where we do the online storytelling, and then we actually play the matches out on the video games, and then make the shows come to life actually with the video
that's
games.
awesome.
Yeah, it's great, and that's where a lot of the character on Late Night Counter-Apologetics comes from, because when people get into that, which you would see on Twitch and other stuff, right? It'll all start to blend together. That's the idea, is that you don't know where the real life stops and the character starts. It's just all a big web. But yeah, so I think, this is. Go ahead.
Can you repeat that last thing you said?
That it all becomes a big web.
You don't know where real life.
Yeah, you don't know where the real life stops and the character starts. Yeah, there you go. That's
how hard 2,000 plus years ago, how hard would it be to convince people of such things? That audience for the WWE and other wrestling federations, if you will,
or companies,
are filled with people who think it's 100% real.
Yes.
Children and adults, they buy into it completely. They are engrossed in the story. They might have shirts. They might have arguments. South Park did probably the best South Park episode was the one they did about wrestling. And WTF, I think is what it's called. But
I live in Alabama, dude. There are still people who will fight you if you tell them that wrestling is scripted.
it's scripted.
They'll fight you.
Really?
It's fake. I
Yes.
remember
No,
my
we call
brother
them we
Rick-
call them marks. They're not seen too highly in the wrestling community. That's for sure.
There are a bunch of rubes. I'm just saying, in Alabama.
You know what the problem is now? The problem is now is that it's more like the wrestlers are becoming marks. And by that I mean like the wrestlers are they're not really it's like they're too into like what they brought into watching on TV growing up. And so it's like they do too many moves and there's too much insider stuff, or they go too hard with their matches, like they're hurting each other. Like it's like no, you're supposed to not hurt yourself and then work the audience, right? And instead it's like the audience is working the people in the ring. You know what I'm talking about? And it's
Well,
like
I think it becomes a vicious cycle, is what it is.
Yeah, it's like audience capture.
Well, yeah, I think they're kind of honing in on a core audience, kind of like a populace does, like a focus group, and they say, "Oh, these people need more and more blood."
Right,
Like,
exactly.
The pageantry isn't enough anymore. They need, it's got to turn into a blood sport, basically.
The focus group will tell you. Actually, you do multiples if you're smart. The focus groups tell you how to make your product more product-y, how to make your product really sell to people, how to get your audience truly invested. And so they're not only coming back, but again, the trick in marketing is to get people to do your work for you and get other people to buy whatever product you're selling. You've really done it right when you can get.
Oh yeah,
it's called pull through.
Yeah,
so,
but I don't even know why. I don't even know why Coca-Cola has an advertising budget these days, right? Like, why do you even need to advertise Coca-Cola? If they stop running ads, would we just forget about it?
No, but that's how you stay number one, and that's what's most profitable, being number one. Look how much.
Oh, sure. I'm sure it is, but I mean, like
Coke. How much?
But yeah, but the goal is that's the goal is to be unforgettable and just ubiquitously integrated into the society such that you don't need to. But then that's so interesting, right? Because Coca-Cola does, and all the number one companies do. Kleenex, and I think about this. Matter of fact, it's so bad that they advertise for themselves, even in like the network TV stuff, on their own networks. I don't need an advertisement for Peacock when I'm watching Peacock. What is wrong with you people?
No, right, I'm watching it right now.
Like, I'm watching it right now.
Yeah. You do, because you have to again, you have a product and you have to promote it, right? You'll never get a better rate than the one you give yourself.
Right.
You have
so let's apply that logic kind of back to the earlier topic of religion, right? Mm-hmm. And how it spreads through marketing and how it becomes self-sustaining.
Well, wait,
because if you look at the early Christian church, you can see them doing that. They basically talk to a focus group of Gentiles, right? And they're like, you can almost see them going, well, was he a demigod? Was he like Hercules or Perseus? Was he born of a god? And the answer is, well, yeah, he had to be, to be taken seriously by you guys. So yeah, he had to be born of a god. And then they're like, is he immortal? Yeah. He's immortal.
Did he have blonde hair and blue eyes?
Does he? Well, does he have magical powers? Like, can he cure people?
Right.
Things like that.
And then it got down to like, well, do I still have to get circumcised?
Right, exactly. And you're like, no, you can just be circumcised in your heart, right? Like, And so it seems a lot like a focus group that get pitched an idea, and they start objecting to things and asking questions, and you're like, it's got to be this. It's got to check these boxes, right, for them to accept it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's, basically what they did.
Hey, your Paul became all things to all people, right?
Exactly.
That's it. That's it. I'm gonna make what I'm gonna customize my product for you. Like, okay, so I have a classic Chevy truck. I'm gonna
The silver
order
regular.
seat covers for it. They're
Okay.
Camaros. I got 2012 Camaro seats. I'm gonna order these seats. I got samples from different manufacturers for leather. Found one I liked. Found two I liked, but one was really soft, so that's the one I'm gonna go with. When I go in their configurator, there's all these options for me to choose. They give you a really high level of customization. Now they're expensive, but they give you a high level. You can get the seat you want, basically, even down to embroidering your logo if you want on it.
Oh, got you. You can put the hot program right in the
I could put
headrest.
hot program. I'm not going
Nice.
to, but I could if I had a lot of hair. So the point of some things like this is if they have an embroidery machine that can pretty much weave anything, there's no point in not selling that to everyone. It's one thing if you just want the SS logo in there that came with those seats when
Right.
you got them from Chevy. But maybe since they can do that, they can do other things. And why not charge a small fee for that? So the seats I order for my truck wouldn't be the seats that you, if you had the same Camaro seat, right? You probably would choose something different. There's all these different permutations that make it fit. Now, let me sell this to you as Christianity. This is a personal relationship with Christ. It's Christ your way. My sister,
Yeah.
recording of my sister singing this Burger King jingle, hold the pickles, hold the lettuce, special orders, don't upset us. All we ask is that you let us serve it your way. That's right. We'll make this sandwich.
That's beautiful.
And that's one of the reasons why any religion, not just Christianity, becomes so effective, because it becomes personal. And that's what makes it precious. That's what makes it sweet. That's what makes it transformative. More importantly, that's what makes it universal.
And honestly, you know what? That's kind of some of what I think I've been finding. What we said about the like the Flying Man. What I liked about it was that it felt personal to us, right? There's all these arguments and all these counter-apologetics, and the Flying Man appealed to me because it felt like something that genuinely belonged to like the YouTube atheist community. Like we all got behind it, we all liked it, you know what I mean? And then it also did kind of the Outsider Test of Faith, which is another favorite of a lot of ours. So a lot of us are like fans of Outsider Test of Faith. We find that to be a particularly useful tactic. And then we had our own, like we had our, you know, our little inside baseball, you know, one, instead of it being like the flying spaghetti monster or the way sort of the Satanists use Satan as an image, as a we had our own little, no, ours is the Flying Man or whatever. So, but something that's really important here is just talking about that, right? So, No Name, one of the things that impressed me about you is that you, we found each other, you know, my one black friend, same thing. We all found each other in this internet kind of atheism community, right? And so that's very different than what the church community is like. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what it's like to go from sort of a lot of people who I think are, you know, just going through the process, and then maybe they start to come across content as just something that they're consuming, right? And then they're looking at people like us, maybe they're finding this channel, right? So let's talk a little bit like how do you actually get involved in this community? Because I think it's important, and it's certainly one of the motivations for the show. And then in your case, you could actually break down this history, because I'm new to the game, right? I probably discovered this community in the last couple years.
Right.
Like I'm trying to walk this path out for people. Like I just started watching stuff, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'll try to start engaging, and I'll talk about a little bit about my experience. And my one black friend, please jump in with No Name. But yeah, tell us about how you got involved. But I want No Name to start too, because he goes back a ways, and I want you to talk a little bit about what it was like, not only for you to get involved, but also what was different, because it was a whole different game back then in terms of the platforms people were engaging on.
Sure. I guess when I started engaging in this quote unquote community, it was back in like the AOL chat room days. Maybe some ICQ. I seem to remember some chat rooms like that too. And then over time it morphed into like Facebook groups, big Facebook religious debate communities. It didn't really hit YouTube big time. I mean, there were a bunch of counter-apologists and things like that, like Logic and King Crocoduck, Aaron Raw, people like that. But until the, you could really start live streaming and doing the YouTube comment section. Mm-hmm. You couldn't really communicate with other people in the realm outside of Discord. That's I forgot about Discord. But not everybody knew about Discord, like the ACA, the Austin Community of Atheists. They had a big
community
Discord.
of Austin. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Atheist Community of Austin. I always do that. So, I mean, I think I probably started out like everybody else. I think I subscribed to the atheist experience, modern day debate, groups like that. And I think the big thing is just, I look at these live streams and they'll have 700, 800 people watching, and it'll only be the same couple of dozen people interacting in the chat. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think my big takeaway from that is just engage, just put yourself out there, talk. That's how you, in my opinion, that's how you get involved in the community.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. So I'm gonna jump into a couple of things that I really wanted to touch on, and this is a perfect opportunity. So for me, like number one, I found this community uniquely accessible because of that. Like, when I'm watching TV, like when I'm watching Stephen Colbert, right? I have no opportunity to ever like really tell him what I think about what he's talking about or whatever, right?
Right. But I don't mind. I grew up in a family where we talked to the television, so
yeah. Oh, YouTube
right. All this shit just made it possible to do that in real time. Right.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna yell at him anyway. It's just a one-way interaction. But also, I don't really have a way, and I guess I could, but I don't have a meaningful way to really engage this community. Like, I'll give you an example. I got raged out, really, like Joe Rogan went too far for me, right? And I used to be a Joe Rogan fan, and I'm from Jersey like Joe Rogan is, and I grew up on Joe Rogan comedy and Joe Rogan be an outspoken marijuana activist and really being into floating. Like, Joe Rogan was a cool dude. I'm super I really like Joe Rogan was like one of my celebrities I really, really thought very highly of, right? And then he just went way, way into the, anti-vax conspiracy conservative nuttery, right? And so I got to a point where literally I was so upset about it. I needed to keyboard warrior it. You know what I'm saying? That community is too massive, right? But his Reddit, right, is like where the like kind of like hardcores are, and it's accessible. And so I found a Reddit where they were talking about, and I would really put these really well seriously thought out responses. Like, no, what he's saying is a problem because of this, and I'd put the link, and he shouldn't say this because of this, and I'd put the link, and he shouldn't say this because of this, and I'd put the link. You see what I'm saying? And then a lot of people liked my comments. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes. And then people started responding to me, no, you're wrong because of this. And then this fool, and I'm back at it. You know what I'm saying? And it started a really meaningful engagement. And eventually I just let it go, right? You're not going to convert Joe Rogan's community, right? Mm-hmm. But I did find a productive space to seriously get my thoughts and frustration out. It was meaningfully engaged with people. But since it wasn't a ton of people, those interactions became meaningful. I could keep track of, this person said this to that person, and that person added this person when they replied. It's just you can digest it, right? And you might not even be able to do that in, say, the cat plays piano community, because it's just too many millions of people watching it, or the makeup tutorial community. A lot of these communities are huge, but our community is like just the right size, right, where you can like just hop in an open chat and just be on the stream talking to the streamer, right? So I think that is it's a really big deal. The other thing is, obviously we want to use this as an opportunity to encourage people, with our community, because the other thing I want to talk a little bit about is I really think that this shift is happening. And, when I first told my one black friend the topic, I was kind of thinking, well, what are some of the things I want to say about this? So one is this shift where, because we always say like the arguments have been done up, like, we've talked about all the arguments, we've talked about all the evidence, and there's not a lot of new stuff. We're kind of shifting to being more community focused, in the sense of, I don't necessarily want to hear some apologists forever, because I've heard what they have to say already. Mm-hmm. And then even the big content creators like Matt Dillahunty or people like that, I've like heard that a lot. And I kind of like, even some of my favorite content creators that I really love, I don't want to say their videos are boring, but they're not as engaging to me as they could be, because even though they're really well produced and really well thought out and really well scripted, ultimately we're all already on the same page. So they're kind of preaching to the choir when I watch them, right?
Well, you have matured in your opinions. You have matured, and
yes.
That's why that's not enough right now. Look at what you're doing. You are now what? You are now a content creator yourself.
Right.
Why? Not so you can rehash the old arguments, but so that you can take the conversation somewhere else.
Right.
Where you think it should be. So you can develop that, because our community, the atheist agnostic community, is growing. And sometimes what people are looking for, well, certainly, often what people are looking for is different. Someone may be looking for comfort. Okay, I just left this religion that was a huge part of my life because I don't think it's true. Are there any other arguments that I need to hear to help me understand if I've made the right decision? I am dating someone who is a believer. How do I manage that? What's the advice there? There's all sorts of things. Or I'm raising my children. I don't believe in God, and I'm raising my children with a theist. What do I do? These topics and others like them need to be addressed. And a person may go video hunting, where they're looking for essentially a course on this, where it's not one video, one episode. No, they want to see 30 of them, because why? They want to make the best decisions. Even when it comes to the salvation issue, whether that's a real thing or not. People want to make the best decision, because it's on the line. Now, for me, I'm happy to talk about it all. What became most interesting when I deconverted or reconverted, because I guess as a baby I was not a theist,
right?
But what happened for me is I really went into the biblical text trying to figure out what was going on. And when I went into it with that perspective, as opposed to just reading what I was told to read by someone at church, or a relative or friend who gave me some scriptures so I could work on whatever in my life, when I read it to try to see what it really was, what's really going on here, it became a completely different book to me. It's hilarious in places that no one else, I don't expect anyone else to laugh. Like, again, I am able, as a former writer, I can see seams where things were stitched together.
Right.
And to me, because it's a treasure hunt, right? That makes it fun. It's fun to know about this. And I get why many Christians haven't read the Bible, because it is the path to disbelief. To read that book.
Absolutely. I've actually taken to saying that as an atheist, the Bible is a sacred text to me, because I believe it's the most effective way to deconvert somebody.
that's likely the case. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. So if
As we did,
Well,
is the Bible
I don't
woke
know if
episode.
it's the most effective. I would argue that Darth Dawkins may be the most effective because you actually have to put effort into reading the Bible. Like if you're just sat down and have to listen to Darth Dawkins, you'll immediately reject Christianity just to stop having to listen to.
You will have to join us on a whole episode that we will need to do of Darth Dawkins.
The Darth Dawkins dossier.
Yeah, we'll need
Yes.
we'll do a hot program on it with my one black friend because he'll actually get us to critique him and be critical of what he says, and we can translate it for people and use him as an example of Christians behaving badly. But if we put him on late night Counter-Apologetics, I'm just going off on him.
It's just going to be a roast.
It's just going to be
totally okay with that.
A straight roast.
I don't know that that's what people need.
No, they don't. It's not. It's not for what you need.
No, that's late night.
It's late night. Late night isn't where you get the meat and potatoes and veggies. Late night is straight candy before midnight, before bed. It's
before midnight. That sounds like a good show name itself. Candy before midnight.
So, but yeah, this is all right. So
word wrestling
entertainment. That's what we do. That's what the business is. We're in the business of word wrestling.
Yeah.
So
we ain't about playing nice. We're about the suplex of apologetics.
We're about beating people up with the verbiage, knocking them out, and heading to the pay window.
Right.
Okay.
But
I gotta give Darth credit though for honing my ability to become a presuppositionalist Myronist, right? Like since I presuppose that Myron grounds reality.
Myron was the flying man's name, but
well,
yes.
yeah, but I mean Myron and God are one.
I will. It's kind of funny because I always just want to rail like just go at people. But you make a really good point. I have learned from him and a lot of these other precepts who I think are totally ridiculous, but I have been able to translate it into like a more educated ridicule, based on really understanding their use of radical presuppositions. So
yes,
I do have them to credit. It's kind of like Donald Trump has really helped me take my my scam game to the next level.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
He's normalized.
I think the precepts are lazy.
Well,
I think
yes.
they're lazy. I don't actually want to discuss my position. I just want to sit here and make you just tired of listening to me, so you just admit that I'm right.
Okay, but my one black friend.
So you'll accept God just to shut me up.
Just to shut me up.
But my one black friend. Remember, I asked you, what about when the grifter pays off? Did I ask you about this with Trump? Or maybe it was No Name. I forget.
I don't think you asked me, but go ahead and ask me.
All right, so the principle was like, all right, Donald Trump's a grifter, right? But in theory, right, sometimes grifters pay off. And in his case, the payoff was like Roe v. Wade was like the number one conservative issue. Like that's their number one thing. And so he promised to deliver the pro-life judges. He did. So he's a total grifter, should have never been president. But in a lot of people's minds, it's going to be validation, essentially, right? Like whatever he did, like don't matter, right? He did because he actually got that done
on one thing. Yeah, he did one thing.
But this is what I'm saying. That was if it was gonna be one thing for a lot of them, that would have been the one thing. You see what I'm saying? So even with the precept, there's kind of that same thing, right? Where like even if it is just you're gonna accept Jesus to shut him up or whatever, it's like part of. I guess I'm like, is he effective to a certain degree? Because I have to admit, he does have seemingly like, I don't know do you think he has a community around him? Is it support, or is it that people just like watching him because they don't like him? Is it a hate watch? I think people really like him though. They think he's good.
Things. That's what he's. Again, it's marketing and human nature. They teach you in marketing classes how to understand human nature to a degree. You're encouraged. I was encouraged to take anthropology, psychology, and I did. And I learned how malleable the human mind is. I learned it's like okay, I have here a Reese's peanut butter cup. Why? One of the reasons this tastes so good is that it has salt and sugar. Those are kind of very different things. But both of those things, I like salt on my French fries. I wouldn't put sugar on my French fries, but it's good. But I would drink a soda with my French fries. So I am mixing those things that are very different.
Right.
Yeah, and the peanut butter cup does as well. I also have a salad for those worried about my own. And I've had those peanut butter cups for days. Anyway, so what makes someone like Darth Dawkins so darn palatable? You love him. You love to hate him. You might love to see him put people in their place. You might love to see him win arguments. Even if he loses an argument, in the mind of his supporters, some of his supporters, he can still be the winner of the argument. Why? Because he didn't cave in and become an atheist in that conversation. And that's what makes it so great to listen to someone like him.
Right.
And also, what does he do? He stands his ground. Don't talk over me. Don't talk over me. Don't talk over me. Don't talk over me. And he can mute you.
Yeah. And that's kind of the character I jump into with Late Night with the Heartbreak J, because it's a heel. And people who don't understand, like, no, people don't realize baby faces don't make money in wrestling, right? Babyface is great. The good guy, the hero, right? Because it's just like, that's what people love. They want to see a great hero, right? But that hero isn't money, right? Until
Hulk Hogan.
No, but here's the thing. Even Hulk Hogan, right? They're not money, because you know Hulk Hogan's going to win. So he's not money until there's somebody you really want to see him beat. Until there's somebody who you really, you just can't stand that guy, and you just can't wait for Hulk Hogan to just show up and Hulk out and drop the leg on him and send him packing. And it's building up that guy that you just want to see get his butt kicked. And that's why I always I'm the heel, right? You either love me because I'm mean and I'm rude and I'm shutting people down, or you just really want to see me get my comeuppance. And if you really want to see me get my comeuppance, I'm going to make you work really, really hard to see it, right? That way, when you do see it, it's like, and that's what a good bad guy does, right? The good guy's finally going to get his hands on him. They finally got the match scheduled. And what happens at the end? The bad guy cheats. Oh, dang it. You see what I'm saying? And the bad guy, all right, so then they got to have the rematch, and they get him, and the good guy's going to win again. And what happens? Oh, the bad guy's girlfriend gets on the apron and distracts the referee. And then the bad guy's bodyguard takes out the good guy, and the bad guy wins again, right? Right? And then they go, no, there's going to be no interference this time. This time, we're going to do it in a steel cage match, right? You see what I'm saying? And then maybe the good guy gets his hands on the back, right? And that's the money, right? You want to see me get my butt kicked, but I'm going to make you work really, really hard and invest very, very seriously before you get that opportunity.
So in your analogy, and I'd love to know No Name's opinion on this, in your analogy, is the bad guy Satan and the good guy the religious adherent who's going through various things in their lives, and the bad guy is always trying to foil them, and they're on their knees praying to go about things in a righteous way and have things work out in a very good outcome that is good for the most people and themselves. But there's always this Satan creeping in, making them behave badly on occasion, or causing ruin or something, like a loan not to go through, or somebody to back out of the sale or what have you, or sell the car that was a really great deal before they get there, even though they were told they'd be waited on. Is that sort of
Doug talks about carrots and sticks, right? And lately I even heard somebody come on his channel and say flat out, I'm afraid of hell, right?
Oh.
And I think it's the same thing. Yeah, the whole plot is boring, without that, even Jesus was tempted by the devil, right? Like you have to have that arc bad guy that's like right there, that even has to be himself supernatural, right? Because if you could conquer Satan yourself, what would you need Jesus for? You see what I'm saying? If Satan was just like a little bad energy from a coworker or something, you see what I'm saying? So Satan has to be just as, like, you have to really, really, yes. And the
But
badder
people
he
pray.
is, the worse.
People pray, and no name, you've heard this before. People pray to bind Satan, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They have a ritual. So as super duper bad as Satan is and awesome in his power, the lady from the bake sale can bind him.
Right. I mean, well, that was the. Well, I mean, no. Look, I mean, I was raised a Christian. I mean, I'm as you guys were. I know various denominations take the like the spiritual warfare side of things more or less seriously, depending on their theological lens, I suppose. And I've attended churches that didn't take it seriously, and then I attended churches that very much took it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point in my life, I took it very seriously. And one of the things the Bible teaches, like the gospel teaches, is that you can apply these teachings, right? Like Jesus taught us how to bind the devil, taught us how to, exercise, right? We're all saints. We're all supposed to be able to do this shit. I don't know about you guys, but like I remember attending that church, and that church said, no, that's what the Bible teaches. We're all saints. Those of us who have been born again and accepted Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior and whatnot. And so we are all, in fact, miracle workers. We are all exorcists. And it is our duty as, like Christian soldiers to fight demons in the world. Right. And so, I mean, we weren't like a cult of exorcists or anything, but that was the theological disposition of that particular church. And some people in that church took it more seriously than others. And I think that is where you start getting into kind of unsafe territory, involving that kind of stuff, superstition with people who were maybe emotionally or mentally ill. Is not a good recipe. But I think in response to the kind of the face heel proposition, I think Jay's smart to cash in on the marketability of the heel as a character. He's got the appeal of, like he said, being this rebel, right? So you can like him for that aspect, or due to his arrogance and pomp and everything, and the fact that he cheats, man, you can love to hate him, right? Because he's a charismatic villain in that respect. But he's also dangles out this carrot of redemption, right? Like the heel can turn into a face. There's always that prospect, right? Yes. So it instills that hope in some people who are hoping. So he cashes in on the hate watchers. He cashes in on the people who want him, are rooting for him to turn, and the people who are rooting for him to be the bad guy he can be, because the face often is like a two-dimensional, boring.
Yeah, and you bring up something that's really interesting too. Part of what I actually loved about heels growing up. I've always been a person, and I've always known I'm definitely a heel, and it's part of it is the heels are actually a lot of times the most unselfish people, right? Think back in the day before the internet and stuff. The heel, right, took a lot of crap from the audience. Right, the heel was harassed. They were, threatened a lot, and they also made financial sacrifices. Right, they didn't get to sell autographs. They didn't get to do the appearances. They didn't sell merchandise. Right, so they literally sacrificed a lot for the business. Right, whereas a lot of times the jerk and the arrogant guys were actually the baby faces. They wanted to be seen with the girls and sign the autographs and sell the T-shirts. Right, so it's a little bit weird like that. But then
Well,
also,
I heard back in the day you had to earn it, right? So you had to start out basically as a bad guy for the good guys, the established good guys to beat regularly. And then you would kind of fight amongst your own ranks to build up like a good enough challenger to actually
yeah, a
threaten.
lot of times it would, but it just depended. Some guys, if you got a guy, for instance, that just came in and he was good looking, so it just depends. A lot of guys, if you're ugly and big, you're gonna be a heel. If you're super good looking and a really, they're just gonna make you a baby. So a lot of it's the look and the package. But the thing I also,
There's some pretty good looking heels though.
there are, yeah, because that goes, that's another thing. That's like a Lex Luger, right? Like Lex Luger was great as a heel because he really in life is kind of at least back then he was like, now he's a great born again Christian, but he was really like an arrogant, pompous, chiseled kind of like Greek god type of body. And then when they tried to make him like an all-American hero, it kind of didn't work because he just really wasn't that likable.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like as an actual person. But the one thing I was going to mention, part of the reason I always liked heels was because almost like the mafia, like you said, you can kind of get behind them sometimes because they make everything more believable, right? In other words, like if wrestling is like if we're doing it straight, my one black friend, if the ref is not looking and I got brass knucks in my trunks, I'm pulling them out, knocking you upside your head. Right? When the ref turns around, I'm pinning you. I win the match, and then I'm going back and I'm not taking the loser's 1 stack. I'm taking the winner's 3 stacks. You understand? I'm getting that winner's money, right? And that sells the whole thing because this is a competition. I got to take care of mine. I got to take care of my people. I'm not worried about these crowds out here. I'm worried about the 4 horsemen. I'm worried about the mouths I got to feed, right? So the heel is making you believe
you're
the
cutting your own
business
nose
of
off
it.
to spite your face. They might not have you back. They might say, "Yeah, screw this guy. We're not having him back in our wrestling match."
Well, that's like the real life. Like, why does it? Yeah, like why do they keep?
That's why people like really whip out the brass knucks.
Yeah, like why do they keep putting back this guy? Every time they put this guy in a match, he cheats, and they keep and he'll be here next week again. But no, I'm just saying that it's to your point. Like people do get behind it because there's a certain sense that they make it more believable by saying like they're actually trying to win. They're actually doing whatever it takes. They're actually trying to make the money. They're trying to win the title. Like they're not, and that gives you something to play off of. But something that I wanted to get back to actual conversation, and so my one black friend had mentioned something that was really important, which I think was why this is a good topic. Because when you first start, maybe in your deconversion, maybe what you need is a lot of the, I don't want to mention names, but there was a lot of stuff that I found when I first came that is very much like a course. And somebody's taking you through the arguments or they're taking you through the evidence. Maybe they've got a series. A lot of times it's well scripted.
Truth search.
They've got little video packages, and their presentation is really tight. That feeds you. But then you will sort of work through that for a lot of us, and you kind of accept, okay, this is where I'm at now. And then it's like, where do you go from there? And I found that period to be quite isolating. At least for me, because most of the people in my circle in life were either theist or at least not recently converted to the point that it wasn't a thing to talk about or deal with. And then really sort of just consuming the content as a viewer, wasn't making me feel like connected to anything. I was like, wow, I found this content I really like, but I didn't know how to take it beyond that. And then I noticed exactly what No Name said, which was that if I started to pay attention to the comments, you would notice the same names all the time. Mm-hmm. And then I noticed...
Yeah, it's mostly like a couple of dozen... Yeah, it's mostly like the same couple of dozen people. Yeah. I find they pop up in a lot of the same... a lot of different content creators live streams and comment sections and things like that. And it's funny because we'll just follow each other from live stream to live stream throughout any given day, right? It's really funny to watch.
That's actually where I was going next, which was not only do you realize it's sort of a manageable number of people, you start to see the same names in different streams and different comment sections. And then for me, I noticed even across across communities. So I started to see the same people in, say, David Pakman chats, which are like a left-leaning like news commentator that a lot of us watch, right? And I've seen the same people. I've been texting in there, and people have been like, "Oh, you're Jay Bundy from Pine Creek's channel," and I was like, "I'm Jay Bundy from Pine Creek's channel." Yeah, that's me. You know, like, you know, and that was before I'd even appeared on any of the chats. That was literally just in the comments. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like just from recognizing the names from the comment section. So then you kind of realize, oh, I see. And now I do that. Like when I join his stream, I scroll up through the chat to see who's there, and then I'll start saying what's up. I'll be like, I'll be like, what up, Cameron? You know, what up, No Name? You know, because if you're kind of late, a lot of your friends already have said something in the stream. So then you kind of know they're there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, this is some of the stuff we got to teach people, too, because part of this is like a how-to, maybe. It's like a how to find the community. So this is a good thing to do. If you go through the stream, if you show up to a stream, scroll up through the chat and see who's been chatting. Also, another thing you do is if you type the @ symbol in a YouTube chat, a lot of times it'll show you who's in the chat actively. So if you don't see a name or something, but somebody's in the stream, a lot of times you can see that there. You can message them, and then it really is important to just say hi, because a lot of times what will happen is I might be in a stream, and some of the homies are in the stream, but none of us have really said anything. So I might scroll up through the chat and notice a couple names. Or I'll say hi to them, or I'll just say good afternoon, everyone, if I don't see anybody I know. And then some of the people will be like, oh, Jay just put a message in chat. So then they'll say @Jay Bundy, and then they'll be like, what up? And then I'll be like, oh, Cameron's here. I didn't even know. You see what I'm saying? So if you don't say something, then people won't even know you're there. But if you just say hi, and your friends notice it, they'll be like, oh. And then a lot of times that's how you make friends, because then even people who are just random, people just randomly say, oh, like say you're MyOneBlack Friend, and you go to a new channel, and it's the first time you've been to that channel, so you don't really know anybody, but you just say good afternoon, everyone. There'll be a couple people, not every single time, but likely a couple people will be like, oh, good afternoon, MyOneBlack Friend, how are you, or whatever. And so so it's definitely helpful to do that, right?
Yeah, I usually just try to say like "sup peeps" or "sup heathens" or something like that.
Sup heathens, you say that a lot. Yeah, I noticed that. That's a good one.
I like heathen because that's what my mom or my grandmother would have called them. So would have called us. Another
thing is to turn on notifications. I was somebody who went years and years on YouTube and never turned on notifications. But I find that they're really important. And I wouldn't recommend turning them on for all of the channels you subscribe to. It's just you have to say which channels are the potential ones that are going to do live streams or live premieres of their videos where I would want to be potentially engaged in a live chat. And so you turn on the notifications for those things. One, it helps you, have a higher chance of catching it in real time. But also a lot of times it'll pop up early, like I said about Nathan's thing, right? I was able to plan around it because one of the things we'll start doing, and I've started to do it just a little bit. It's one of the things I like about StreamYard is it makes it really easy to actually schedule the stream. And so I'll be able to go and pick the description and then just, put up the notification so people get the notification and get it really early. You know what I'm saying? And so you can kind of plan, oh, so-and-so's going live at this time on this date, and then you can, work around it if that helps get it into your schedule. Because I think a lot of times people will miss these opportunities, and just because you didn't know it happened until it was over, or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm with you. They only mention like hit the notification bell and just every YouTube stream ever. So I don't know how anybody doesn't know that it is a very important thing to do. But yes.
True. Well, also I think sometimes it becomes YouTube script. And a lot of times people say, oh, it really helps us. It does help the channel. And also they'll say it really helps with the algorithm. Right? So you might just think of it like that. So for me, I heard people say it all the time, but I didn't do it.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
and make sure
and make sure you hit the bell. Yeah, and you're just like, okay, sure.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button. Y'all should be smashing that like button right now. No.
The share thing is literally like, I don't know. Of those three, that is the most onerous.
You know what,
the sharing thing. I don't do that very often.
You know what though? As growing content creators, we should actually be encouraging people to share.
Oh, I know.
Because the share would help. The share is a huge solid.
Share
that's the guilty admission.
The Bible woke episode with your clergy, your favorite clergy.
Yeah, share that, please.
Share that with him, especially if you got a Greg Locke. Share that with him, and
my one
Jesus don't know what they're talking about over there. Like, no, Greg, we give you chapter and verse.
And as good Myron evangelists, as evangelists of the Church of the Flying Man, we should be sharing more. So,
we should.
I feel guilty.
Also, we're actually, I think we're trying to get the Church of the Flying Man actually established as a legit religious organization.
It shouldn't take much.
Yeah, I think we've all seen the John Oliver.
My one black friend, you're supposed to be the nice one of the group.
I am. I'm just being honest. It didn't take much. You're allowed to. I am sure the day will come where we will qualify just with this broadcast that we keep doing. We will qualify as ministers because look, my uncle runs a church. My aunt who prayed for her knee rather than using ice, she also is in ministry at church, and they get a tax exemption that I don't.
Right.
And yet I'll give you just as many scriptures at any broadcast of this program on the one Sunday we do it every week as they will in church. So the difference between them and me is they're convincing other people, and they are themselves convinced of the truth of the Holy Bible. Whereas me, let's put it this way. I'm not convinced, and I'm probably going to convince you to not be convinced on a number of things.
That's the whole point. I mean, it's a religion of doubt.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, it's about
I'm
doubting.
sure the IRS would find me lovely for suggesting it is a religion of doubt. There's probably, the way the dictionary works online these days, there's probably a very soft actually, Pocketlocker, can you pull up the definition of religion? Let's see.
I've looked into it. Oh yeah, I'm already ready. We've looked at the IRS's definition. No, we're trying to do this. Yeah,
that's the important. That's the only important.
Google and show me on the Google.
Do you want the IRS stuff, or
I want to see what Google defines? You can switch to IRS, even though I have no intention of applying.
I think
Tux
is going to do it for us.
One.
Yeah, we only care about the IRS. That's. What did you just want the definition? Sorry,
I just want the definition. Yeah,
I'm just
if
sharing.
You would please.
I'm looking at the wrong screen.
Again, I'll say
usually
it again.
Defined as a social cultural system of designated behaviors and practices, morals, beliefs, worldviews, text, sanctified places, prophecies, ethics, or organizations. Yeah, I mean, this is easy. However, there is no scholarly consensus over what precisely constitutes done. Easy. Easy.
Done.
Actually, Timothy Leary wrote a whole book called "Start Your Own Religion." I mean, this is actually all the I'll tell you who I am. Here's what's going to happen. At some point, I'll have a talk with my advisor, and I'll hold up a document, And I'll be like, Mike, do you know what this is? And he'll be like, no. And I'll be like, this is the 501c3 for the cult that I just started over the weekend. And the next conversation we're going to have is I'm going to say this to my advisor. I'm going to say, let's be honest. You find that that's an interesting decision, but you're not really surprised, are you? Like you're like, you may be surprised I'm showing it to you right now, but you're not really surprised that I started a cult, are you? He's gonna be like, nah, not really.
I smiled because my friend Sarah, who I used to work with, she said, you know, you'd make a really good cult leader. And I said, that's probably the best compliment I've ever received. And yes, I would make an excellent cult leader.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all good. But all right. So another thing that you guys mentioned there, because you had mentioned the Bible woke episode. So another thing I think we should do as burgeoning creators, and it's good for our community do, is callbacks, right? I always mention Deacon No Name always brings up a previous episode. It really helps because part of the reason we do this, part of the reason we want to create all this content when we're small is so that as the community grows and people find the channel, they're able to go watch previous episodes, right? And we're already at that point where, like, if you find, next week's episode, we've got like a couple days worth of content that you can that you can check out. Yes. But that's kind of the point, because one thing that I love about this community is that it's a long format community, right? There's some short format stuff, but a lot of the stuff we get into is stuff you're intended to put on and just listen to for a few hours. But that's another thing that can help you get involved in the community. So, for instance, when I found Pine Creek's channel, Pine Creek's been doing this for years and years and years, as so many of the creators have. And so one of the things that helped me get more caught up to that community was going back and watching old videos. Part of the inspiration for this and the late night Counter-Apologetics was the whole why I no longer go to church, sermons like these. He doesn't really do that type of thing as much anymore, but that's the series I found that I actually really liked. And then I was like, oh, he's making stuff now. And then I kind of got caught up to people. So going and liking that old stuff, commenting on it, because like I noticed even now, I'll get people that find my stuff now and go like a science video I made years ago, or go like a drum cover I made 6 years ago. And you're like, what? Like, I forgot that it was even out there. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But then they'll say something and then I'll respond to it like, oh, cool. I'm glad you know what I'm saying? So that actually is another thing that is not just going through a content creator's back catalog.
Right.
It's also how you kind of get caught up on who's who, where there's a lot of the things you hear about on that channel come from. And it is a way to engage with not just that creator, but also that community, because if you comment on those videos, people will still reply to them and, that whole comments. Because I always joke about it, but I always say we're comment section people. But I mean that seriously. Like, this whole thing for us comes out of engaging in the comment section, engaging in the live chat, and then ultimately being the people who hop on the streams and call in, and then we meet each other as a result. Oh, hey man, I saw you on so-and-so's channel, really thought what you had to say was cool, we should do that. And that's how I met you, that's how I met No Name, that's how I met Tux. So I definitely would encourage people to do that, and it's very rewarding. One of the conversations I had with Tux, as I said, I think the way we're doing it was we're showing people that they're using YouTube wrong. Right? Like, a lot of people use YouTube as like a television channel. Like you put a program on the YouTube, you find a channel you like, and then you sit there and you watch it. YouTube should be used like a bar, where you kind of show up and you join in the stream and you see if your other regulars are there, and you find your regulars and you get caught up with your regulars real quick, and then you bar hop together, oh, this stream's gonna shut down. All right, well, who's streaming next? Oh, Bread of Life is gonna be on. All right, cool. Well, we're gonna hop over to Rebecca's channel. And this is what No Name's talking about, right? You go kind of from stream to stream, and then you go,
It's
oh,
a pub crawl for YouTube.
Yeah, it's a pub crawl for YouTube. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't think of it in that respect. Again, I'm a product of the 80s, and when I was a kid, me and a buddy of mine set up a pirate radio station with some equipment that his dad had out in the garage. Yeah, I mean, it was not like super big or anything, but in Tuscaloosa back in the 80s, yeah, there wasn't a lot of competition for the airwaves. So, but yeah, but it required a lot of effort and a lot of technical expertise and a lot of expensive equipment. And so I look at YouTube as a very democratic way to set up a radio station, right? Like you basically I mean, hell, you can just do it from your telephone, right? Like you just set up a late night call-in talk show where, you're bored, you want to talk about things, right. and you generally want to talk about things with people whose opinions you like and value and respect and share, to some extent. You don't have to, but it helps with the chemistry, I suppose. And so at the end of the day, I think it's just like a DJ pirate radio station that anybody can set up in their own home, and then we can kind of network together in a party line. So I think of it in a very 80s way. Yeah, pump up the volume. Yeah, meets hackers. But for stupid people, like anybody can do it. Like
anybody can do it. StreamYard makes it really easy too. And
exactly.
I'll say this. I love that, and I like to be in character on my channel and stuff. But to be honest here, I say this all the time. The truth is, I really did start doing this, even making the content, to make friends. Like I realized I was making friends, and I valued that. And I was like, oh, I'll make even more friends if I have my own channel, or people can come over to my channel and do stuff, or I can create a space to talk about things. And so another thing I wanted to touch on is I consider this very important. And one thing I used to work in ministry, right? And when I worked in ministry, a big thing was like intentional community. The idea that you weren't part of a community accidentally. You didn't just stumble in a relationship, right? You sought relationship, and then you were strategic about being in relationship and feeding and nurturing those relationships. And I try to be that way in this community. And part of that is valuing what I call micro community, right? Like if you ever are part of a church, right? That just imagine kicking it at home, having a movie night with like just 4 or 5 friends from church. Like I used to work at a church, right? And we were like, say, all like the youth leaders and stuff, right? But we were all, say, like early 20s, right? And there was mixed group, probably about, let's say maybe 5 or 6 to 8 of us at any given time, right? And when we would just get together, right, as all people who worked at this church together, who loved on these kids all day, we would just get together, watch movies, make a meal, hit the bar, and play video games, right? And the girls would sit around talking, boys, we were just sitting there hooping, playing video games, whatever, just having fun. And we loved it, right? My point is, there was no need for like it to be about, well, are you getting millions of views? Are you selling merch? Are you gonna blow up? Is your content gonna go viral? Right? Nobody needs that in their life. You see what I'm saying? Your life could be so enriched by just gathering around the fire, with a nice bottle of wine with a couple of friends. And so that's what I mean. Like YouTube could be that, right? It could just be a way for you to gather with a few homies. And then when you start to realize like little stuff, like because I've jumped on Nathan's channel, or because I've jumped on Pine Creek's channel and they know about our stuff, like they've seen a little bit of our stuff. Like I don't expect them to watch our stuff or subscribe or hit the notification bell for our stuff like you should. But even if they catch it once in a while, it's pretty cool, because then you're like, yo, a content creator that I really like you know, hit me up with a view or two.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. You know what I'm saying? Just to kind of know that. And then even when it's not, like, I know that if 5 people watch my video, you know, one of them's probably Cameron, one of them's probably YouTube Punk. You know what I mean? And so you start to realize that even if it's a small number, it's probably your friends. And so that I call it micro community, right? It's the idea that
it's still very flattering. Right?
it's still very flattering,
checked out my
exactly.
shit.
Yeah. And then also it's interesting too, because I think about this as an educator. So I just spent a semester teaching what I think is like the greatest evolution class I can think of. Like, it was just so amazing. And I had a teaching mentor who was like just an amazing dude. That's the main reason. But it was just incredible. And I'm thinking these students have literally 2 professors who are only teaching this one class to them, right? And so, you know, it's meeting his professional requirements, it's meeting my professional requirements. But we had 16 students, right? So if we get to the point where there are 15 to 20 people who see our videos on a regular basis, right? Am I not having a similar impact in the world as I would be having a small class? You see what I'm saying?
You could.
So I
and
value
if more
it.
educators thought like you, right? Like, the first person that really turned me on to that concept was Dr. Josh Bowen over at Digital Hammurabi.
Wow, yeah, check him out. Check him out for sure. Huge fan.
You're familiar with him.
Yeah.
And he did a great job of marketing himself to me. Like, he did an impressive round of all the different, you know, various channels and stuff, right? Just really getting his name out there, getting his face out there. And he, you know, when he started out, he had that same view, right? Like, wow, 200 people are watching a stream about ancient Akkadian, right? Like, he was like, can you imagine if I had a classroom of 200 people?
Right.
I'd be like the top professor at this university. They'd love me. They'd be like, holy shit, you got 200 kids to sign up to learn Akkadian.
That wanted to be there.
That wanted to be
there. Right.
People, the audience wants to be here.
Right.
It's not a requirement.
It's a small niche, but damn, you know, like, look at his channel now. Like, he started off with a couple hundred followers. Now he's got, I don't know, thousands. I don't know.
Right. And
I think when I subbed to him, he had like 178 followers. Now he has like thousands. He's great.
It's fantastic.
But it can happen. You can do it too if that's what you set out to do. Like, I wouldn't have a problem with you doing something like that, because I personally believe that more atheists with like scientific backgrounds and an understanding of Christianity, like, your voice is valuable. Like, I'm not blowing smoke. Like, I know that it may, like, I think I've said this before, it sounds very cynical when I put it this way. But like, there aren't a lot of like PhD. I mean, you the Venn diagram of who you are, you know, being black, being double doctorate, you know, your background in Christianity, 5 generations.
Got a disability.
You got a disability? Oh,
I'm bipolar.
Yeah,
I'm very bipolar.
So yeah, it's like, I really do think that you could be a very impactful voice in the community. I think that you would represent a lot of people who are currently underrepresented, and that might actually form a community that wasn't there before, or that didn't have a voice, a face, and a voice to put with it.
Yeah, that was sort of my thinking with MyOneBlack Friend, was that there just wasn't even there wasn't enough people of color. And if
there's not,
the fact that his name's MyOneBlack Friend even was so great to me, because it's so hard for me even to find black friends. And I was like, when am I gonna find a black friend in this community that I could learn from, that I could be comfortable with, that could, help me do this, right? Because making content by yourself is just rough. Satan's little helper, thanks so much for coming through. We appreciate that love and support, of course. Thank you very much. So yeah,
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise Satan.
I really I appreciate you saying that. I definitely want to close out just because it's been a while and we're a little over time. But this has been great, and ultimately I think we have gotten to where we wanted to go, which is to just really talk about our experience of how we started doing this, and also to encourage people that these are some of the things you could do. I'm gonna just wrap up with a couple of quick other things to touch on. I love to promote my Discord. I'll go ahead and pull up a quick link to that.
Yeah, Discord, guys, that is absolutely another great tool for building a community. I find, like, if while you're working on stuff in your studio, if you just hang out in your general voice chat, you'll get more people will stop by your Discord because they'll see activity.
Yes, I generally try to do that. Also, I stream a lot on Twitch, and when I do that, generally, if I'm not using StreamYard, Discord is the way to get on that stream. And then you can also like interact with me during the day and, do video calls and all that type of stuff and get stream notifications. But just in general, I wanted to put the Discord because things like Discord are a great way to stay engaged with other content creators and other communities that you really like. If you find a community and a content channel that you really like, chances are they have a Discord or some way that they like for their community to engage outside of their channel. And you should definitely look into doing those things. Of course, liking videos, subscribing to them. Believe it or not, that was a big first step for me to just say, oh, I want to support this content creator. Let me like the video. Let me subscribe to the video. That makes that video pop up more for you, but also more videos like it. And because YouTube notices that you're using even that sort of level of engagement with that community, then it makes it easier for you to start to put the pieces together of who appears with who and which type of people are sort of engaging across these different channels. So all of these things actually help. If you like our content, please do like, subscribe. Definitely share. I'm going to start encouraging people to share more because that came up. And we've also got links in the description if you want to toss a little something in the plate and make a donation. My one black friend, I'm going to get your closing thoughts, and then we're going to let our guest, No Name, close us out.
Sure. First of all, thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, No Name, and thank you, Pocketlocker.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
I want to say, if you don't see the sort of community that you want, be the one who's the source of that community. Create it. And really go after it, because when I was doing stand-up, what I quickly learned is I didn't wow everybody in the audience, but I did wow a few people. And that's how an audience of millions is built. You're finding a few people that love what you do each time. And of course, your audience grows there from that. So just embrace it, realize it's a process, and it's probably not going to happen overnight. But if you stick with it, it will eventually happen to your satisfaction. Oprah, as successful as she is, had fewer regular viewers than SS Sniper Wolf. Oprah had about 9 million consistent viewers for the Oprah Winfrey Show. Sniper Wolf has more. So, wow. And yeah, Leah's beautiful and she's funny and all that stuff. I don't know that Oprah tried to lay that many jokes on her audience. And I don't know that she would have been more successful if she did. But someone like Oprah brings awareness to a lot of issues and people making a difference in our society. That's pretty powerful. And Oprah made a darn good living doing that very thing. And I don't know what else she does, but I knew she did that. Right. So there's no reason that you can't see the level of success that you want. Most of us will never see Oprah's level of success.
Sure.
Not rules for that matter. But if what you want to do is share your gifts for understanding things, help people through difficult times, or just help them laugh at what they've been through, which I think is
Right.
helping people through a difficult time or an easy time.
Yes.
But for me, what I think in doing this, what I think I will find most valuable is hearing that people found a way to talk to their loved ones about their non-belief, and that those relationships stayed intact, even though you may have walked away from whatever particular religious faith that you used to be an adherent to, or maybe you didn't adhere, you just sat there and listened. And now you're over it. You want to move on. And so you should, in my view.
Absolutely. No Name, as the resident expert in building community as a non-believer, what are your closing thoughts for the people?
Well, yeah, I want to echo a lot of what my one black friend just said. Build the community that you want, right? And you got to engage, right? Like nobody's going to come knocking on your door and necessarily drag you to atheist church. We don't have
Right. Great point.
We don't have the pastor coming by to check on you on Sundays to see why you didn't show up.
Great
so
point.
You got to reach out. You got to put yourself out there, and I think it is comforting, especially like from my personal aspect of my life, is that I don't know a lot of atheists in real life, right? Like I don't know socially as far as meeting up in groups and things like that. Where I live, it's just a very conservative Christian area, and that just doesn't happen. So an internet community really fills that void for me, and it gets me through a lot of long nights at work. Like I love listening in, like you said earlier, Jay, about it being more long form content, like long live streams and stuff.
Right.
I swear I've listened to the same live stream for an entire shift at work.
Wow.
Yeah, I have to. I like it,
but just got to listen.
Yeah, when I get dialed into my work, I don't want to keep having to change videos every 5 minutes. I want to put something on and then just work for hours. And so if it's long format, it's really great for that. Everyone, I want to thank y'all so much for tuning in. As always, be good to yourselves.
And each other.
Please join us next week. Thank you so much again for helping us out, my one black friend. I want to say a quick thank you for Jason and Satan's Little Helper for coming through the chat. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Thanks, No Name.
Thanks.